Good day everyone, I'm David, the moderator for this webinar. I welcome everyone for today's webinar, which is Prepare Your Company to Meet the Final FSMA Rule Requirements for the Environmental Monitoring. I would now like to introduce our presenter for today, Dr. John Ryan. Dr. John Ryan is the president of RyanSystems.com and holds a PhD in Research and Statistical Methods. I would now like to hand over the floor to the speaker. Over to you, John.
Thanks, David. Welcome, everybody. We're going to spend about 100 slides or a little more today going over environmental monitoring. So it doesn't matter where you are in the supply chain, this concept is required for you to work on it. All right, so different environments, farms, fields, packing houses, trucks, containers, distribution centers, processors, you name it. Your job is to figure out what your environment's like and figure out how to monitor it. And I'm going to talk about a lot of different technology, including Zigbee, location, identity, and condition, RFID, and then a lot of different softwares we'll talk about. And of course, your favorite, record keeping. All right, here's a little sample of microorganisms tested in 2012. This is a chicken manufacturing line where the FDA is holding these conference calls. If you're in government, you get to tap into them and listen to them. This is an important point. You all get these food safety certificates no matter where you are. You got to apply for and go through a certification, right? So if the feds come in during a recall, they don't even want to look at your food safety certificate. New dependence on hard data. Now, what's hard data? Your certificate is what we call soft data. It's subjective, all right? And hard data comes from testing, chemical testing, environmental testing, et cetera, where that data is going into a lab and you're getting a number back. Well, that's going to be the bottom line on today's presentation, that no matter where you are in this food distribution system, the cost for doing that and the responsibility for doing that is yours. All right, so we have these problems, adulteration and hazards. What are they? Pests, insecticides, and chemicals. This is a big one that's going to come up in your future. Government's been focused a lot on bacteria, pathogens, etc. Food residues, that food's contaminated from your packaging materials. And then the one that always hits a biggie here in terms of adulteration and hazards, it's allergens. Animal feed using antibiotics is banned. Hazard analysis, you've been through this, and risk-based preventive controls for human food. This is the start of all of our, in 2015, start of our FSMA rules. We talked about hazard analysis and preventive controls to define the process, which is what you still have to do. Look at the risks and validate the preventive control plan, implement that plan. Now, so far, we've been focused on pathogens, right, in the food industry. So validation includes process design and qualification and continued process verification. You can't lie about the results of a sample. You can write a food safety plan, implement and verify the plan, but if the plan doesn't prevent recalls, illness, death, test failures, rejected lots, etc., the plan implementation and verification are not valid. So you got to validate preventive controls, and when necessary, whenever you make changes to that plan. Okay, what's an environmental pathogen? This is what we're after. Pathogen capable of surviving and persisting within the whatever environment we're in, doing it through environmental monitoring. One of the things that's important here, I like to bring it up on occasion, is that calibration. When you're doing testing, according to the rules, 117.4, environment holding, conveying, and manufacturing using, you're taking samples, they got to be the equipment has to be calibrated. Of course, sanitation controls that prevent hazards such as pathogens and biological hazards, do employee handling and food allergen hazards. This is an environmental control. You hear it over and over in food safety. Change the requirements from you could hide your data to you cannot hide your data. Okay, just a quick touch on high-risk foods, because these types of things, whether they're or have a high-risk history, high recall history, or you find them in Codex Alimentarius as high-risk foods, have to be controlled. Environmental controls have to do with you preventing, reducing risk from the very start. The hazard evaluation required by paragraph C1I of this section must include evaluation of environmental pathogens. The hazard evaluation must consider the effect of the following: the formulation of the food, the condition, function, and design of the facility, raw materials and other ingredients, transportation practices, manufacturing and processing procedures, packaging activities, labeling, storage, distribution, any other hazard relevant factors such as weather, nature of some hazards, product movement, map or flow chart the process, define the hazards, establish controls, develop procedures, set measurement points, and collect data. A lot of people like to forget transportation. I like to call it out. This is just a quick process that we use. A truck comes into a washer bay, it gets an initial inspection. These are all conditions, indicators of drinking water or growing water quality. Coliform testing is a source of basic food safety audit requirement. Even with failed test results, a farm will pass the food safety audit. And that's true. Okay, biofilms are alive and play host to all types of living. Biofouling has been identified as a major contributor to emitter clogging and drip irrigation systems. Farm irrigation systems, pipes, hoses provide warm, moist conditions, lets the biological contaminant grow. Even if the water is tested clean at the source, some level of contaminant which grows in biofilms, the right conditions, warm and moist. Drip systems underground are most likely, but I'll say it again, I don't care where you are in the distribution process. If you're in a distributorship, you need to test your water. There's a few things that do work and a lot of things that don't work. Bottom line, preventing biofilms in farm watering systems, there's no known solution. Water sample testing device, they can be handheld by farmers. Summary, with a relatively small number of farms tests sampled, but with extensive chemical and biological testing for contaminants, the following observations were made. Better management of water measurement and controls is needed if they are to reduce risk. Do a risk analysis, corrective and preventive controls, verify and validate. Okay, now I'm going to talk about a different kind of cross-contamination. Bin and carrier cleaning as well as the fields were used. Clean between moves to prevent moving contaminants from one field to the next. How many of you do that if you're on a farm? The produce itself, but maybe even taking samples out of the bins and the trucks. A farm should have HACCP and critical control point plans, establish new data keeping, establish periodic data and preventive action plan reviews with your suppliers. In short, do the testing and the monitoring. Now, here comes the stuff you love, documentation and record keeping. Now, under the feds, you can do it electronically, and I would recommend it. It's lower cost, it's more accurate, easy to implement. In transportation, you have what's called a contract of carriage, so an agreement between the shipper and the people shipping or receiving the product. Now, I'm going to talk about some technology. I started earlier, I said draw a map of your operation. Now, this could be done in a factory where you might get a quick start. Adenosine triphosphate. It's a 1-minute test this is just a procedure for ATP swabbing. Get to know your local lab and their required procedures. Just a quick talk about traceability. Now, many other types that are available, temperature, explosives, bacterial contaminant devices. Here's some of those devices. This is the one that goes in the truck. The feds want you to keep this data for 2 years, boys and girls. Sanitation records, ATP test, that's that little handheld $2 test record for your trucks and wash records. Thanks for attending today, and hopefully see you in the extended presentation we're going to do sometime early in the year. All right, thanks folks. Thanks for attending. And environmental monitoring covers a lot of stuff. It's time for you to get going on it, and good luck. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. That'll conclude the session for today. Thank you everyone for participating. You may all disconnect now. Have a great day ahead.